He tossed a plastic grocery bag at my feet like it was trash, my nightgown half hanging out, a fork poking through the side. "You're not contributing anymore, Mom," Kyle said, his voice flat. "I need space for people who pull their weight." The front door slammed. I stood alone on the porch, holding nothing but humiliation and a spare key. He thought I'd just leave. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. If I was no longer welcome in his house, then neither was the car I helped him buy. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. I wasn't always the woman standing on a porch with a plastic plate and a grocery bag of clothes. I used to wear crisp scrubs, press my hair back with discipline, and walk into strangers' homes to care for their sick and elderly. I was a home nurse for 35 years, part caretaker, part counselor, part quiet witness to people's last breaths. I was good at it too, calm under pressure, gentle with my hands, strong in silence. When my husband Malcolm died of a heart attack just after our son Kyle turned 11, I didn't crumble. I couldn't. There wasn't time for that. Bills didn't pause for grief, and children don't stop growing when your world does. I picked up extra night shifts. I learned how to budget every cent. I made birthday cakes from scratch and paid for piano lessons with cash I earned on double shifts. No one ever called me a burden then. Kyle was always a sweet boy, a little shy, a little sensitive. He liked to leave notes in my lunch bag when he was little. "I love you, Mommy. You're my favorite nurse." I still have one of those notes in my wallet, creased and faded like the rest of me. I raised him to be respectful, hardworking, thoughtful, or at least I thought I did. I never dated again after Malcolm. Not seriously. I didn't want to bring strangers into our home, into Kyle's routine. I didn't want anything to distract me from keeping him on the straight path. It was just me and him for decades, and I liked it that way. After he graduated college, thanks to a combination of my overtime hours and a small scholarship, we celebrated with a steak dinner. He hugged me so tight that night. "You're the reason I made it, Mom," he said, eyes glassy. "You're my hero." I believed him. So when I began to feel the early signs of arthritis in my hands and a dull ache in my lower back, I kept going. I worked through the pain. I smiled when I wanted to cry. But eventually, my body began to whisper what my heart refused to hear. "You can't keep this up forever." One day, I came home from a shift and couldn't get back out of the car for 15 minutes. My legs had locked up. My fingers tingled. My breathing was shallow. It wasn't a dramatic collapse. No ambulance, no tearful goodbyes to the job, just a quiet, painful realization. I needed to retire. I told Kyle one Sunday evening over dinner. We were sitting in his open-plan kitchen. The light above the island was too bright, and Madison, his girlfriend, had made quinoa salad that tasted like soap. "I'm going to retire," I said softly. "The agency's been understanding. I'm eligible. It's time." Kyle blinked, then smiled, more like a reflex than warmth. "Oh, congrats, I guess." That was all. I expected a little more, if I'm honest. A hug, a nod of pride, maybe a toast. But he just looked at his phone and said, "Well, I guess we'll need to talk about the living situation." The words didn't sting at first. I chalked it up to surprise. I had moved in with Kyle 6 months earlier, after I twisted my knee carrying groceries. He offered immediately. "Stay with us while you heal, Mom," he said. "It's your house too." At first I resisted. I didn't want to be the mother-in-law in the guest room, but I let myself believe his warmth. I brought my own. Sheets, cooked dinner twice a week, folded their laundry sometimes. I never complained when Madison left dishes in the sink. I never interrupted their Netflix nights. It was meant to be temporary, but somewhere along the way, we settled into a rhythm. And so, I assumed, naively, that my retirement wouldn't disturb that Kyle would understand I was ready for peace, that he'd be proud. Instead, things started to shift almost immediately. Within a week, Madison began asking questions about how long I planned to stay home. Kyle brought up responsibility in casual conversation, like it was a subtle warning. There was a silence building between us, a low hum of resentment I couldn't quite name yet. I had spent 35 years being needed. Now, all of a sudden, I was excess. I thought telling Kyle I was retiring would bring us closer. Instead, it unlocked a version of him I never knew existed. At first, the changes were too subtle to call out. Little comments, shifts in tone. A missed good morning here, a slammed cabinet there. The kinds of things you notice only when you're no longer useful. I'd lived with Kyle and Madison for about 6 months when things started to sour. At the beginning, Madison had played the part well. Polite smiles, compliments on my cooking, the occasional invitation to join them for a movie. But after I retired, her friendliness began to curdle. I'd walk into a room and the conversation would stop. Or worse, continue, but shift to topics about lazy people and taking advantage. One afternoon, I came into the kitchen and found a few job listings left on the counter. They were printed out, highlighted, tidy stacks of paper, like a silent suggestion, all part-time roles at grocery stores, call centers, and overnight caregiving. Jobs. Madison was at the sink, scrubbing a single mug like it had offended her. She didn't look up. "Oh, Kyle thought these might be helpful," she said, too casually. I just stared at them. One read, "Active seniors wanted, be a smiling face at our front counter." The headline may as well have said, "Please go away with dignity." I didn't respond. I just folded the pages in half and slipped them into the trash with the eggshells. But the message was loud and clear. Your rest is inconvenient. You see, Kyle and Madison had plans. Quiet ones, whispered behind my bedroom wall. A kitchen remodel, a destination wedding, a baby, eventually. I was not part of those blueprints. At best, I was a placeholder. At worst, a piece of furniture in the way. I began to pull back. I stopped, making dinner for them. I stayed in my room more, read books, called old friends. I told myself maybe this was just a phase. Maybe Kyle was adjusting to the idea of me no longer being the strong, tireless woman he'd known his whole life. But it wasn't adjustment, it was resentment. It all came to a head during one specific dinner. Madison had invited a couple of their friends over for tacos. I helped prepare the toppings, grated the cheese, even toasted the shells in the oven. When we sat down to eat, everyone had ceramic dinner plates. Real ones. Except me. Mine was a thin, bendable plastic plate, the kind you'd use at a picnic. It wasn't an accident. I looked at Madison. She didn't blink, just kept chewing, nodding along to some story about hiking trails and protein powders. Kyle never looked in my direction once. I tried to laugh it off, but the crack in my smile must have been visible. No one asked if I was okay. The next morning, I opened the pantry to find the groceries I had bought. Oatmeal, chamomile tea, my favorite brown rice, moved to a bottom shelf behind a crate of protein bars. My name was scratched off the shared grocery list. The joint card Kyle had given me for errands was missing from its usual spot. That same afternoon, Kyle pulled me aside. "I think it's time you looked at other options, Mom," he said quietly, not making eye contact. Madison's mom might. "Come stay with us for a while. You've had some time to rest. Maybe it's time to, figure out your next steps." I felt something in me crack, not loudly, just a quiet splintering, like glass under tension. "Other options," I repeated. "What does that mean exactly?" He shrugged, uneasy. "Maybe a retirement community? Something with, people. Your age. I just think the dynamic here isn't really working anymore." The dynamic. I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a dynamic. I didn't argue. There's a kind of humiliation that doesn't need rebuttal. It just needs air, space, silence. I returned to my room and began folding clothes into a grocery bag. Not a suitcase, because I hadn't come with one. I had never planned to stay long. Just enough to heal, just enough to help. As I reached into the bottom drawer for my slippers, I saw something I'd forgotten I still had. A small ring of keys. One of them, scratched with blue nail polish, was the spare key to Kyle's car, the one I had co-signed for. The one he still hadn't finished paying off. I turned it in my hand slowly, the metal still warm from the drawer. He thought I had nothing left to hold. He was wrong. The day I stopped working was the day they stopped seeing me as a person. There's a certain cruelty in how people begin to erase you, not with screams or slaps, but with edits. Quiet, careful edits to your place in their lives. It began with the groceries. I noticed the fruit I bought for the house, bananas, pears, blueberries, was disappearing overnight. When I mentioned it, Madison laughed. "Oh, Kyle and I started eating cleaner. We didn't think you were still using the fridge." Then it was the laundry. I'd always tossed in our loads together, saving water, keeping things efficient. One day, I found my clothes piled on a chair, still damp, while their clothes tumbled dry. No explanation, just that pile, like I'd overstayed my welcome in. The spin cycle, too. The final straw came a week later. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through an envelope of insurance paperwork. Kyle walked in, looking tired and distracted. He poured himself coffee, didn't say hello. That had become his new habit, silent mornings. I cleared my throat. "I've been thinking about what you said, about finding my own place." He looked up, hopeful, maybe even relieved. "Oh? I just need a little time. A few weeks." He hesitated. "Yeah, about that. Madison's mom is finalizing her travel plans. She'll be here by the end of the month." There it was. A ticking clock. "You're giving me 2 weeks?" I asked, the words more breath than voice. "I just think we need the space. We're starting a new chapter." I nodded slowly. "Right, and I'm the footnote." That night, I found the spare bedroom closet rearranged. My jackets had been pushed to the far end. Madison's floral suitcase sat open on the floor. My toothbrush was gone from the holder in the bathroom, replaced with 2 matching electric ones in sleek black and pink. They were already moving me out. I just hadn't caught up yet. A few days later, I walked into the kitchen and found Madison with her feet up on the stool, scrolling her phone while eating yogurt straight from the tub. She didn't look up when she spoke. "I saw you left some old pillows in the hall closet." I threw them out. "Hope that's okay." I didn't answer. "I mean," she added with a thin smile, "they smelled old. There's a kind of rage that doesn't boil. It doesn't scream. It just compresses. Shrinks your spine, tightens your jaw, and makes you feel like a guest in your own story." That night, I opened the top drawer of my nightstand and took out the spare key again. The car was parked in the driveway, spotless. I'd helped Kyle buy it when his old one broke down 6 months earlier. I put $8,000 down, never asked for it back. He couldn't have qualified for the loan without my name on it, and now he wanted me gone. I slipped the key into my purse, but the final insult, the moment that scraped something loose inside me, came one rainy Sunday. Kyle and Madison were hosting a brunch. I wasn't invited to sit with them. I was asked to just hang back a bit while they entertained. I watched from the hallway as they laughed, passed mimosas, and offered their guests warm bagels on ceramic plates. When I finally entered the kitchen to grab a bite, I found a small plate on the counter, plastic, cheap, disposable, set apart, from the others like a warning label, not for display. I stood there, holding that plate like it was evidence. I took a bite of the cold egg quiche, bland, overbaked. I had served them thousands of meals in their lives, made from scratch, seasoned with care, and now they handed me this. Kyle saw me standing there and gave a tight smile like he didn't know how to look me in the eye anymore. I walked back to my room, plate in hand. My purse was already packed. I'd folded my sweaters, zipped the bag. I was done, but not finished. I didn't make a scene. I didn't shout or sob or slam a door. Instead, I wrote a short note, left it on the kitchen table next to the empty plate. "You'll find the room clean. I've taken my things. Best of luck with your future." Then I walked out into the gray afternoon, my bag over my shoulder. But before I reached the end of the driveway, I paused. The car sat under the maple tree, its silver body still shining from last week's rain. His pride and joy. The same car I'd helped him get. The same car I wasn't even allowed to ride in anymore when they had plans. I reached into my coat pocket and wrapped my fingers around the key. They thought they'd taken everything from me. But they'd forgotten what I still held. I realized my presence was tolerated only as long as I was useful. The love? That had an expiration date. I sat on the city bus with my purse clutched close and the plastic plate wrapped in a napkin, beside me, as if I needed a souvenir of my shame. The sky was overcast and the air felt like cold breath against my neck. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, my mind took me back to a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon, to a child-sized Kyle sitting cross-legged at the table, swinging his legs while I sliced apples for his lunchbox. "Don't forget to put in the note," he used, to chirp. So I did. Every day. Little hearts drawn around "I love you" or "do your best today." On exam days, I packed an extra juice and told him to smile when he got nervous. I remembered the night he had a fever so high, he hallucinated. He thought the ceiling was cracking open. I held a cold towel to his head for hours and whispered, "I'm right here. You're safe." That boy, the one who clung to my hand during thunderstorms, would one day evict me like a tenant overstaying a lease. And I didn't see it coming. That's what broke me the most. Because even when the warmth faded, even when Madison started drawing invisible lines between us, I still told myself it would pass, that it was temporary stress, not character showing through. But now I knew better. Got off the bus 3 stops early. I didn't have a plan, just needed to walk. My feet moved instinctively toward the old neighborhood, the one Kyle had grown up in. I passed our former block. The house was smaller than I remembered, the windows fogged with age. The front porch light still worked. We used to decorate that porch with pumpkins and cheap tinsel. Malcolm had built a bird feeder in the backyard from scraps. Every Saturday, he made pancakes while Kyle and I argued over cartoons. A memory rose, up so vivid I stopped walking. It was the day Malcolm died. He'd gone out for his usual jog, never came back. The call came from a stranger's phone. I remember collapsing on the bathroom floor, gripping the sink so hard the porcelain cracked. Kyle was 11. He came in with wide, wet eyes and whispered, "Did Dad go to heaven?" I nodded, still gasping for breath. He said nothing else, just knelt beside me, pressing his little hand into mine until the world slowed down again. That was the moment. I promised myself I'd protect him from everything, even if it broke me, even if I never healed from that day. And I didn't. Not really. I spent the next 20 years holding our lives together like a cracked vase, glued from the inside so no one could see the damage. I worked through holidays, skipped birthdays, sewed my own uniforms, all so Kyle could have a life that didn't taste like scarcity. I paid for his first car, co-signed his college loans. When he asked me to help him buy that sleek hybrid last year, after his promotion, I didn't even hesitate. Now I wished I had. Back in the present, I made my way to a small coffee shop and sat in the corner booth. I pulled out my phone and opened my voicemail. I didn't know why, just habit. There it was, the last message Malcolm had ever left me. "Hey baby, didn't mean to wake you, left early for my run, save me some coffee. Love you." 16 seconds. I'd saved it on every phone since 2005. I held the phone to my ear and let his voice wash over me like warm water. Then, without even thinking, I pressed Save to Archive one more time. That night, I stayed at a motel, peeling wallpaper, buzzing light, and the stale smell of other people's decisions. But it was mine for now. I locked the door, placed the car key beside the TV remote, and finally let the tears come. Not for the rejection, not even for the betrayal, but for the version of me that didn't see this coming. I wept for the mother who thought love was enough, for the woman who worked herself hollow, thinking sacrifice guaranteed gratitude. And when the sobs stopped, and silence filled the room like water in a basin, I realized something. Kyle had been slowly pushing me out for months, but I'd been erasing myself for years. I looked at the key again. Sleek, smooth. His car still sat in that driveway like a monument to our illusion of closeness. But that car wasn't just transportation. It was leverage. It was acknowledgement. It was the one thing he needed from me, and the one thing I wasn't ready to surrender. Have you ever been left out like that? Like the life you built suddenly didn't belong to you? Let me know. I walked out that door with a grocery bag and plastic plate, but I also walked out with his car keys. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of someone arguing in the hallway outside my motel room. Muffled voices, a slamming door. Then silence again. I rolled over, bleary-eyed, and stared at the car key on the nightstand. For a moment, I reached for it like it might warm my hand. Then I sat up and began to plan. There's a strange calm that comes after you've lost everything you thought was holding you up. I had no home, no job, no title to wear, but I had breath and I had options. The world hadn't ended. It had simply cleared. I called Linda. Linda and I had worked together at Mercy Hill Home Care for nearly 2 decades. She was the kind of woman who kept extra casserole in the freezer just in case someone's heart broke. We hadn't spoken in months, life, retirement, distance. But when she answered, her voice wrapped around me like a soft quilt. "Girl," she said, "what's going on? You sound like a ghost." I told her everything, not with bitterness, just facts, the motel, the eviction, the key. When I finished, there was silence on her end. Then, "You're not staying in no motel. Pack your things. You're coming here. Bye." Sundown, I was sitting on Linda's couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender and chicken broth. Her little house was old, sure, but it was filled with warmth, worn furniture, photos of grandkids, a quilted wall hanging that said, "You are still becoming." "I've got a room out back," she said. "Used to be my sewing room, but I haven't touched a needle since arthritis got in my knuckles. You'll like it." I didn't cry. I just nodded and whispered, "Thank you." Over the next few days, something strange happened. Life slowed. I made coffee in a chipped mug. I helped Linda prune her rose bushes. We listened to gospel radio and played rummy at the kitchen table like 2 old soldiers recovering from war. And I started working again, but on my terms. Linda's church ran a community clinic every Wednesday. I asked if they needed help, even if I wasn't licensed anymore. The answer was yes. I spent hours each week organizing pill packs, checking blood pressure, and making old folks laugh with my dry wit and tissue-wrapped peppermints. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me purpose, familiarity, and that deep kind of usefulness that doesn't require applause. One Wednesday after clinic, I got a text from Kyle. "Hey, can we talk? I need the car title. Please." I stared at the message for a long time. The car wasn't just his transportation anymore. It was a symbol of everything he still wanted control over. But I hadn't forgotten whose name was on that title. Mine. I didn't respond. A few days later, another text came. "I'm trying to sell the car. Buyer wants to see registration and paperwork. Can you drop it off or mail it?" Still no apology, just logistics. I set my phone down and went outside to water Linda's ferns. That evening, I logged into my shared bank account to check something and found a surprise. Kyle had stopped making the monthly car payment. I called the lender. The E. Car loan was in default. If he didn't pay soon, it would be repossessed. But technically, I was on the title, meaning the debt was tied to me. Suddenly, I understood his urgency. Madison had probably told him to unload the car before it wrecked his credit. But the truth was, he couldn't do anything without my signature. That night, I pulled out a manila folder I'd carried with me since the motel. Inside, the signed agreement, proof of the $8,000 down payment I'd made, copies of every loan statement I'd received in my email since he defaulted. I stared at the papers and felt something strange. Clarity. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just the undeniable proof that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was simply done. The next morning, I called Kyle. First time in weeks. He answered fast. "Mom, thank God. Listen, I just need the title. I'll come pick it up. Or you can mail it. I'll cover shipping, whatever." His voice sounded tight, strained. No warmth, no remorse. "I'll think about it," I said evenly. "But I want you to know I'm not rushing." He scoffed. "Come on, Mom. This is ridiculous. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be?" "No," I said calmly. "You made it hard. I'm just choosing not to make it easier anymore." Then I hung up. That night, I slept without dreams. He wanted me gone, but forgot I still held the signature that made that car his. About a week after that last phone call, I got a text from Madison. That was new. "Hey, can we please sort this out? The car situation is really stressful for Kyle." No greeting. No, "I'm sorry for how we treated you." Just stress. Their stress. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Silence was a kind of answer, and I had finally learned to use it. But I did notice something odd that day when I walked to the corner store. Kyle's car listing had vanished from Facebook Marketplace. I checked again later that evening. Still gone. I clicked his profile. A new post, vague and dramatic. "It's wild how people you trust can turn on you when you need them most." I almost laughed. That's when it started. Within days, Linda's landline started ringing at strange hours. Once, it was a blocked number. No one spoke on the other end. Another time, it was Kyle's voice, masked with a half-hearted attempt at casualness. "Just wanted to see how you're doing," he said. "I'm doing well," I replied, keeping my voice level. "Hope you are too." Silence. Then, "So, have you had time to look over the car paperwork?" "I have," I said. "And I've decided not to sign anything, not until I feel like I'm being treated like a human being again." His tone hardened instantly. "This isn't about feelings, Mom. It's legal." "No," I said, quieter now. "It's personal. And you made it that way." Click. The next day, I found an envelope in Linda's mailbox with no return address. Inside was a printed letter, legal-looking, but not from a lawyer. It was a formal request from Kyle for the immediate transfer of the vehicle title. At the bottom, he'd typed his name like a signature. Kyle J. Bennett, Power of Attorney. Pending. He had tried to file for power of attorney without even speaking to me. Probably under the claim that I was mentally unfit or refusing to cooperate. But there was one problem. I wasn't legally incompetent. I was just done cooperating with people who only called me Mom when they needed something. Linda, ever the war veteran of family drama, took one look at the letter and snorted, "He's grasping. You hold the key. He hates that." Still, the weight of it wore on me. I didn't want a war. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. I wanted Kyle to understand that love wasn't a currency and mothers weren't banks you could overdraw. A few days later, I got a voicemail. Short. Low. "Hey, it's me. I'm sorry. I messed up. I shouldn't have let things get like this. Please call me." I played it twice, then a third time. The voice sounded broken, or maybe just tired, but I didn't call back, because I'd finally realized something painful but freeing. I didn't trust him anymore. I could love Kyle from a distance. I could remember his boyhood sweetness, his giggle under the blankets during thunderstorms, his wide-eyed wonder at birthday candles. But I could no longer ignore the man he had chosen to become. And once trust is broken in a relationship like this, it doesn't just bruise, it erodes. A week passed, no more calls, no more letters. Then one day, while I was helping Linda in the backyard, her grandson came racing in with her iPad. "Grandma, look, Uncle Kyle's car got towed." We both froze. Sure enough, a neighbor of Kyle's had posted a blurry video on Nextdoor of a silver hybrid being hoisted onto a flatbed in the middle of the night. Tow away zone, past due registration. Kyle. Must have stopped paying everything. Loan, insurance, plates. Maybe he thought I'd give in under pressure. Maybe he was playing a game of chicken with the universe. But the universe doesn't flinch. That afternoon, my phone lit up with another message from him. "They took the car. I don't know what to do. I messed everything up. Please call me." Still, I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the manila folder again, took out the title, folded it neatly into a new envelope. This time, I included a sticky note. "Ownership isn't about signatures. It's about respect. You lost both." Then I dropped it in the mailbox. No return address, just my handwriting, steady, small, quiet, like me. I wasn't keeping the car to punish him. I was keeping my dignity intact. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For the first time in months, I made myself pancakes, fluffy, golden. I sat in Linda's little kitchen, watching the steam curl up from my coffee, and smiled. I hadn't won a war, but I hadn't lost myself either. His silence after that call was louder than any apology he never gave. 2 weeks after the car was hauled away, I received a letter in the mail, this one real, with a return address. Kyle's handwriting on the envelope was oddly neat, like he'd slowed down to make it look sincere. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper. "I get it now," it began. "I messed up. You gave me everything, and I gave you the bare minimum in return. I wish I could undo what happened. But since I can't, I just want to say thank you. For all of it. And I'm sorry. Really. There was a PS at the bottom. I signed the car title. It's in your name now. It's yours. Do what you want with it. No ask. No manipulation. Just the bare bones of a son trying to rewind time." Didn't feel triumph when I read it. I didn't feel revenge. I just felt tired. Like someone had finally stopped pounding on a locked door I was never going to open again. That evening, I made a decision. I drove to the impound lot in Linda's neighborhood. A chain-link fence surrounded the gravel yard, rows of dented sedans, and repossessed dreams baking under the sun. The attendant looked up from his clipboard when I gave him the make and model. "Hybrid sedan, huh? That yours?" I nodded. $450 for release, cash or card. I handed him my debit card and waited as he walked off. 5 minutes later, he pulled the car up to the gate. It looked the same, shiny silver, clean lines, but somehow smaller than I remembered. Like a child's drawing of a car. I ran my hand along the driver's side door and opened it slowly. The inside still smelled faintly like Kyle's cologne and fast food. There were receipts in the console. A sweatshirt crumpled. In the back seat, a gym bag that hadn't been used in weeks. I sat behind the wheel, key in the ignition, and breathed in the stillness. He had given me the car. Legally. Finally. But it wasn't about the car anymore. It was about the turning point it represented. The moment I stopped asking to be valued. That weekend, I listed it for sale myself. Priced fairly. Clean title. Cash only. It sold in 3 days. I walked into the bank with a manila envelope of bills, more than I expected. Enough for a reliable second hand. Sedan, plus some tucked away for peace of mind. Linda came with me to the dealership, and we picked out a modest burgundy car with low mileage and working AC. She grinned as I signed the paperwork. Nothing like buying your own damn car at 62, she said. We both laughed. The next morning, I stood in Linda's driveway, coffee in hand, staring at my car. My name on the title. My name on the insurance. It hit me then, quietly, without fanfare, that I hadn't just regained something. I had rebuilt something. That afternoon, I was invited to speak at the Women's Retirement Circle at church. Not formally, just an informal testimony, as they called it. A chance to talk about transitions, letting go, finding strength again. I stood in front of a room of about 30 women, all of them somewhere between 60 and 80, some with oxygen tanks, others with lipstick like armor. I told them the truth, not just about Kyle, about how easy it is to disappear inside motherhood, to become so useful, so dependable, that people forget you were ever a full person. I told them about the motel, the plate, the spare key, and I told them how I started over, not by waiting for an apology, but by reclaiming what was mine, quietly, calmly. The room was still when I finished. Then one woman in the back raised her hand. "Did you forgive him?" I paused. "Yes," I said, "but not in the way you think." They nodded. They understood. After the meeting, a few women came up to me with tears in their eyes, saying they felt seen. One whispered, "I haven't spoken to my daughter in 2 years. Maybe now I won't feel so crazy about it." That night, I received a final text from Kyle. "I understand why you've gone quiet. I don't blame you. But I hope someday we can talk. No agenda. Just as people." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Some doors stay, closed not out of spite, but because the room behind them no longer feels like home. I gave him what he wanted, but not the way he expected. The morning I sold the car, I stood on the sidewalk watching the buyer drive off down the street, the taillights disappearing like a final sentence. I didn't wave. I didn't take a photo. I just stood still, letting the silence wrap around me like a new kind of belonging. I walked back inside Linda's house and placed the envelope of cash in a shoebox under the bed. I didn't count it again. I knew what was in there. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of being secure, not just financially, but emotionally. That afternoon, I did something small but symbolic. I ordered my own set of kitchenware, stainless steel, solid, a full set of ceramic, plates, no more plastic, no more eating quietly while others laughed at the next table over. I bought a tablecloth too, a deep blue one, the color of dignity. Then I made a list. Not of chores or groceries, but of what I wanted for myself in this next chapter. Mornings with coffee and no one asking questions. An honest day's work, on my terms. Peace in my name, not pity in someone else's. My own place, not big, just mine. A week later, I found a cozy duplex listed just outside town. Clean, quiet. The backyard had a pecan tree. The moment I stepped inside, it felt like something clicked into place. The smell of fresh paint and sunlight through the blinds whispered, "This is where you start again." "I signed the lease," Linda cried when I told her. "Happy tears," she said, fanning her face. "Don't get it twisted." We moved my few belongings in her old station wagon. The plates, the quilt, the shoebox of cash. I didn't have much, but what I had was mine, fully. Finally. On my first night there, I made myself dinner, baked salmon and jasmine rice. I set the table for one. Ceramic plate, cloth napkin, water in a wine glass. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. Not because the food was special, but because I was, and I no longer needed an invitation to believe it. That weekend, I donated a portion of the car sale to the church clinic, quietly, anonymously, just enough to restock their blood pressure cuffs and vitamin packs. I didn't need credit. I just wanted something good to grow out of what had fallen apart. The next day, I walked past a mirror in my new hallway and didn't recognize the woman at first. She looked softer somehow, but not weak. She looked like someone who'd walked through fire and didn't smell like smoke anymore. Later that week, Kyle sent one final message. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I want you to know I see it now, everything. You didn't deserve what we did to you. I'm working on myself. I really am. I read the message 3 times. Then I placed my phone down without replying. It wasn't anger anymore. It was peace. Sometimes the best response is silence, not the cold kind, but the clear kind. The kind that says, I hear you. I just don't need to carry you anymore. A few days later, I saw Madison's name pop up on a social media post. A new job, a new apartment, no mention of Kyle. I didn't dig further. I didn't need to. Whatever they had was their story to rewrite now. I had my own. One evening, while folding laundry, I came across something tucked inside a sweater pocket, a crumpled lunchbox note, creased with time. Kyle's childhood handwriting, wobbly and proud. You're the best mommy in the whole wide world. I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it in my new jewelry box. Not because I forgave everything, but because I could still remember the boy before the bitterness. The boy I raised, the boy I once believed would never forget me. And maybe, deep down, he hadn't. Maybe it would take him years to fully understand what he lost. Or maybe he'd never grasp it. But that was no longer my weight to carry, because I had let go, not out of spite, but out of grace. Would you have given him the car title, or kept your distance like I did? I left his house with a plastic plate, but I found myself holding peace, pride, and the keys to my own future. Some mornings, I still wake up before the sun. Old habits, I guess. Years of rising early for shifts, for school lunches, for the quiet rituals of motherhood that no one sees but everyone benefits from. But now, I rise not out of duty, but peace. I make my coffee the slow way, French press. No rush. I sit by the window, wrapped in a shawl, and watch the pecan tree outside sway in the early breeze. The house is quiet, but not empty. There's a difference. In the stillness, I've had time to think about how easy it is to disappear inside the role of mom, how society romanticizes sacrifice but rarely honors the woman behind it. They love us when we're strong. They admire us when we're useful. But when we get tired, when we dare to sit down, they step over us like cracked pavement. I used to think if I gave enough love, labor, patience, it would come back. I thought motherhood was a transaction of the heart, but it's not. It's a choice, a holy, exhausting, beautiful choice, and like all sacred things, it deserves boundaries. I've learned that love without respect is a trap disguised as loyalty. That helping isn't the same as enabling. That silence isn't always noble. It can also be a slow form of self-erasure. And perhaps most importantly, I've learned that starting over doesn't have an age limit. I moved into this small home with barely a box to my name, but what I lacked in furniture, I carried in wisdom. I've built a life that fits me now, quiet, honest, and mine. The clinic still calls me Miss Bennett, even though I tell them to use my first name. The older folks like to joke that I run the place, just without a paycheck. I smile and tell them, dignity is my salary now. And it's enough. Every now and then, I get the urge to reach out to Kyle, but I stop myself. Not because I'm angry, but because I'm finally listening to the quiet voice inside that says, you've done enough. Maybe one day we'll meet again. Maybe there will be a new version of us, older, wiser, softer, but I won't chase it. I've learned to release things that no longer choose me back. To the women listening, especially those who've spent their whole lives giving, I want you to know this. Your worth doesn't vanish when your usefulness ends. You are not a transaction. You are not expired milk. You are not a guest in the house you built. You are the house. And if someone tries to evict you from it, emotionally, spiritually, or physically, you can walk away knowing this. You still hold the keys. I started this story with a plastic bag, a plastic plate, and a car key in my coat pocket. What I have now can't be packed in a bag or parked in a driveway. I have peace. I have my name back. I have mornings that don't begin with dread. I have silence that doesn't ache. And I have this. A simple truth that took me 6 decades and 1 eviction to learn. When they stopped seeing me as valuable, I started seeing myself as priceless. And that, I suppose, is the real key I took back.